Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to another discussion. My name is Hassan. I'm a person who stutters, and this is a series of talks which I'm doing with various experts in different fields who I feel may be able to help people who stutter and hopefully increase their own understanding of what we go through. Um, Pleased to welcome my guest this morning, Joanna Polillo. I'm certified coach and practitioner in NLP, hypnosis, and emotional change technique, ECT, which is a timeline therapy accessing the unconscious mind to take us back to original events which have left us with limiting beliefs. In her client work, she also utilizes the powerful tools of quantum healing, Ayurveda, Reiki, as well as North American and Celtic shamanism. Um, I'm, very happy that that you're here to speak with us, uh, with us, Joanna. Just to tell you a bit about stammering and how and what my understanding of stammering, stuttering is. There is no known uh, explanation for it. It's not really proven. People have hypotheses and theories, and there's no known cure for it. Although different things work for different people, one thing doesn't work for anyone. And this is why I think it's important to speak to as wide a range of experts as possible. Um, and yeah, so I'll leave it at that. But the first thing I would ask if you can first of all just tell us a bit about yourself. I know I've skimmed the intro, but if you can tell us a bit about yourself, and then if you can tell us uh, if your client list has ever included somebody with a stammer.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me. And you did an amazing job with the intro. So I'll just maybe talk about myself on more of a personal level. So I'm a coach, as you mentioned, and I mostly work with mothers. And though I haven't had a client who has struggled with stammering, all of my clients have stuttered with anxiety. And from my understanding of speech anxiety and stammering, anxiety is interlinked to that. So yeah, this is a very interesting conversation for me and is giving me a lot of insight as well. And what I would say is that, in particular, emotional change technique is very useful in going back to an original state or an original event, which is highly emotionally charged. And oftentimes we don't even know about the event. And in doing this emotional change technique, this timeline therapy, we can uncover a lot and go back to that original event, neutralize those emotions around it, which inevitably changes our current state.
Very interesting because excuse me, I was having my breakfast while we were doing this, so that's okay. Um, well, otherwise it gets cold, etc. Um, the original event hypothesis is actually quite common, as you know, in psychiatry, psychology, etc. And stammering actually does, in many instances, start in childhood.
Hmm.
Now, for example, when a child is learning how to talk, and there's a traumatic event or a traumatic environment, and the child associates talking with danger,
Hmm.
and then the child then starts to stumble on words, and it worsens when no words come out, which is known as speech blocks. Stammering is actually what we do when we try not to stammer. So sorry, I'm interchanging stammering and stuttering. The term is stuttering in most of the world, North America, etc., but stammering in the UK.
Okay, understood. Mm.
Interchanging. So I think your ECT could be quite useful in
Mm.
trying to locate what happened and find out what happened to our inner child, heal the inner child, and that could help us now. Um, could you uh, I don't know if you can perhaps explain a few steps on how ECT would work. I've never actually heard of ECT. I've heard of EFT,
Mm.
but not ECT. And I think EC sounds more focused than
Mm.
in the EFT, emotional freedom, but the change sounds more focused on just finding out what happened and then changing the I can't say changing the memory, but changing our frame of the memory, our perception of what happened. Because we can't change what happened. We can change how we feel about it. So maybe you can explain.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way emotional change technique works is that you go through a series of emotions, so the basic emotions, and I'm sure you'll tell me which ones you believe are most associated with stammering, but in my feeling, it would probably be fear. So we go through all of these emotions and we get the mind in a relaxed state. And the purpose of that is so that the unconscious mind can do the answering for you. So as the recipient of ECT, you would just answer the questions with the first thing that comes to your mind. So we're trying to locate this event. So for example, if we're doing ECT for fear, we're asking the unconscious mind where that first event is, what age, and then the person who is receiving the ECT will have images coming to their mind, and it doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to be something that they think is going to be associated with that feeling. In fact, oftentimes, if you have something in your mind, a memory that you think is going to be the thing, then that sort of blocks the process from working properly because you want to just go in with no expectations. And then oftentimes it'll be something that you didn't even expect to be having an effect on you now. And then when we do that, we look at the event from the person's perspective, and then we also look at any significant others that may have been involved in this memory, this imprint. And then we make changes to the imprint based upon the resources that we have today as adults. And then we take those changes and apply them to that time and also up the timeline from that point until today. And what happens is if it's done correctly, and there can be layers, so this could be done multiple times for the same feeling. But what we find is that when the person returns to the present day on their timeline, they feel completely different when looking back on that past event and when tuning into that emotion, whether it's fear, guilt, shame. And that's how it works.
Too often, we do carry the past with us and into the present day when it should have been left behind.
Mm.
And and often it's not a conscious thing. We don't consciously have the past with us. It's the stored trauma within our psychology, physiology, etc. Um, Specifically, um, I'm speaking about myself and sharing the experience of others who I've discussed this with. Um, we don't normally have much problem when we're totally alone. We can talk and we can talk. I mean, there is muscle memory as well. I mean, stuttering and stammering has so many layers. There is muscle memory, and a lot of it is learned behavior as well. For example, if I'm sitting by myself and I'm reading from a book, I can read fine, but often I'll feel some kind of a speech block or hesitant and and choppy speech as well. And I'm quite confused. I'm thinking I don't have any external stimuli, but I'm still feeling a block. Then I realize it's maybe the way my neurology is wired or whatever. But the difference when I have a stammering feelings when I'm alone or I'm with people is the feelings of guilt and shame and self-consciousness. When I'm alone, a speech block is just a speech block. I just kind of I work through it and I shake it off and I don't think about it. But when I'm in in a presentation, I'm talking to someone and I feel blocks and I can't even structure a sentence. What happens is traumatic memories are created upon traumatic memories. So in effect, there was this original incident when I was a child, maybe, or incidents, but going through my teens, going through school, etc., more traumatic memories are being created. So
Very.
there's there's over 40 years perhaps of traumatic memories. Is there any way we can deal with them? So so what I'm saying is, even if we have dealt with original events, there's a lifetime of trauma which is layered up. Is there any way we can work through that?
Yes, so that's a fantastic question. So the way ECT works is that, as I mentioned, you go back to that original event. So let's take shame as an example, because this is something that you've mentioned as associated with stammering. So if you go back to that original event and you apply the resources that we've discussed, whatever they may be, depending on the client, depending on the situation, what you then do within this process is you take the client back through the timeline. So from the first event to the current day event, and you apply the changes up the timeline. And the client will know what they are, because you know that same feeling of shame that you had as a child, if you hold that memory, you'll know that that same feeling of shame is the same one that you felt in your teens, in your 20s, and it just keeps repeating itself. So what you would then do is take that change and within your unconscious mind, and you would apply it to all of those traumatic events um, as they happen along your timeline. And as I mentioned, sometimes this happens in layers, and you're also talking about layers of trauma. So sometimes this requires a few sessions, especially if it's something that's deeply seated and that there's many layers of trauma around. And an interesting thing that I was reading when I was just doing some research on stammering ahead of this chat that we're having was the muscle memory that you discussed. So how, the larynx tends to tense up in anticipation of speech in the company of others. So I actually have a question for you. Is there any work that you do in the present moment to try and relax the larynx ahead of trying to talk, or as a way to counteract that speech anxiety when you're in a social situation?
Yeah, that no, that is a good question. I've taken part in many therapies over my lifetime. There's breathing exercises, etc., and just phonation, relaxing the larynx. However, at present, I'm not focusing on physiology at all. I'm just focusing on the psychological aspects and and I'm working on something called TMS, which is actually stands for uh, tension um, tension myositis syndrome, and some people also call this too much stress. But the actual acronym is tension myositis syndrome, and So it just involves focusing on feeling safe and the um and the idea is if we can if I can be the same version of myself that I am when I'm sitting with my cats and on a stage with 1,000 people, then then I will not feel um inhibited.
Hmm.
Not feel inhibited, or I won't feel the need to um locked up or tense or stammered. And so yeah, just a feeling of feeling safe in all situations, um, and and the hypothesis goes that in in the modern life, that there's not really a risk to our lives. We won't, we're not going to we're not going to physically die in a speaking situation, but the the limbic brain or reptilian brain thinks of everything as a life or death situation. It switches off non-essential functions. It switches off, for example, the larynx is. And if I'm speaking in a presentation, sometimes my larynx is off. It's as if someone's just switched it off. And this is my limbic brain saying, you don't need speech. What you need is you need more speed, you need more power need this whole to be able to lift something, to be able to run, to be able to hit someone. And speech is not a it's not a it's not an adrenaline fighting response. So this is why then I thought, if this is the case, I can do as many physical exercises as I want. I can do this from morning to night. But the minute I'm in a speaking situation, the speaking mechanism is going to be off anyway. So
Absolutely.
is it not better to focus? And yeah, but from your question, I'm assuming you have a larynx relaxation method you want to share with me.
Well, the reason I bring that up, and as you've outlined, it's a multi-layer approach, and a multi-layer challenge. So my question is not so much physiological, but more energetic. So just thinking about the body's energy system, the chakras. And I think oftentimes, if there is a trauma experienced in childhood, it can get locked in certain chakras or energy centers, and in this case being the throat chakra. So you mentioned earlier, it often happens that a child may feel like it's not safe to speak, it's not safe to speak up, and that can be the first sort of traumatic imprint. So my suggestion is more around energy work and working on the energy system in a way that, as you're saying, like feeling safe, and also somatic exercises which calm down the nervous system. I feel like those could be some great exercises to introduce as well.
I I noticed you mentioned the term somatic, and this is uh, and my understanding of somatic tracking is when you feel the feelings that are coming up, not push them down, and
Yes.
letting the feelings travel through the body. And then,
Mm.
am I on the right track?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the beginning of it is, and I think as a society in the modern day world, and probably particularly with men, we're taught that, yeah, like there's no time for feelings. So we shove them down, and then they manifest in various physiological symptoms and health challenges. So yeah, I think the beginning is definitely allowing yourself to feel those feelings. And in particular with stammering, and again, the research that I've done and listening to you speak is, yeah, like anticipating having the stammer while you're speaking is probably what causes it to be worse itself. So again, like you've been talking about, just feeling safe in the body and also feeling safe to feel those feelings and so that they can pass and release.
You mentioned chakras, etc., and and my understanding of chakras is that they are um, I have probably the wrong understanding, but is it various various locations, um, various locations in your body in a straight line? Is that right?
Yeah, so the major ones are, there's 7 in a straight line, going down your body from your root at the base of your spine up to the crown at the top of your head. And they are nerve plexus. So they're where nerves meet within your body, and they have a particular energetic charge because of the significance in your nervous system.
And is this linked to the vagus nerve?
So the vagus nerve, the vagus nerve is it's the largest nerve in the body, isn't it? And I think I'm not exactly sure how it interchanges with each of the chakras, but I'm sure it does in some way.
Would you have any practical method to activate the throat chakra?
Yeah, absolutely. An amazing way to do that is by humming and singing. And also, our throat chakra is our creative center. So any expression of creativity, whether it's writing, creative writing, whether it's drawing, painting, anything that the individual is drawn to in particular for creative expression is amazing, an amazing way to get the throat chakra moving. And also practicing safety in expressing yourself. I mean, personally, I've had like a long-standing history with not being able to speak up for myself, not being able to confront people. Um, so again, this links back to, our psychological state and working on edging ourselves out of our comfort zone in that area. So practicing saying no when you mean no, and letting go of people pleasing behaviors. So I think that's the multi-layer approach that could be really helpful, is expressing yourself in many ways, but also teaching your body that it's safe to leave your comfort zone. As you mentioned, the limbic brain is always looking out for dangers. So teaching your brain, teaching yourself that it's safe in gentle ways to leave your comfort zone. And in particular with the throat chakra and expression could be a great approach.
It's actually it's very very interesting that you mentioned the people pleasing trait that people have, and it's very prevalent in stutterers from my conversation with others and from my own experience. Um, uh, people pleasing, seeking approval, and being fearful of the other person's um perceived criticism or judgment from other people. Um, and and it's also very very interesting that the work that you do. It you know, even though you've not worked with stutterer directly, I feel a lot of it is applicable to people with stutters, and and as we know that there's the stress response. um Everyone knows it results in fight response, flight or freeze, but but there's a fourth F, which is less well known, which is fawn. You would be aware of that. Fawn, FAWN. which is people pleasing, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah.
Um, and and then people who have stutters anyway, if they people please, um, that can result in even more holding back because you don't want to say the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and then the speech blocking is a manifestation of holding back, isn't it?
Mm,
So yeah, this is yeah, just when you mentioned when you mentioned the holding back and issues with people pleasing, which that actually reminded me of the fawn response.
absolutely.
Yeah. Just share a story. I was at the hairdressers yesterday for a haircut, and I'd given the barber specific instructions on how I want my haircut. So halfway through, he says, no, I think we should do this. And I said, and before I could even consider what he said, think about it and respond, essentially he says, I'm the hairdresser and I'm the hairdresser and so start again. When I'm thinking about this, it's it's, it's giving me some kind of anxiety. He says he essentially told me that he's a hairdresser and and um um and I'm not. And he says he told me he knows how to do it, how to do his job. So he told me to let him do his job, and he says something like if if I don't tell him to do his job, then he won't tell me how to do how to do um my job. And then he went ahead and did what he wanted to do, and I froze. I actually froze. Um, and honestly, I felt shit. I felt as if I'd been assaulted. I actually felt that because and I felt shame that I wasn't able to say no. Um, and I just froze and let him do what he wanted. And um, look, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to reduce the seriousness of someone being assaulted, but I felt that. I felt that 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 she should have waited for me to say yes or waited for my consent. And afterwards, I felt so much self hatred of myself. And the feeling of shame and self loathing hasn't left me. I've still got it. So and I was I had a chat with my wife about this, and I feel that the only way to get over this is to speak to him and just and explain that what happened was wrong. Even though he is the expert, um, he has to follow instructions from his clients, and I don't know if I'm making it any sense here,
No,
but
absolutely. Yeah. I think whenever we have a limiting belief, whatever it is, it can be a limiting belief around not being good enough or not being lovable or not being able to do things right, whatever it is, life is so amazing because it's a mirror. And whatever your unresolved beliefs are going to constantly be mirrored back to you until they're resolved. So these situations, though they're challenging, it's just reflecting back to us what you still need to resolve. So my suggestion, and if you were my client and we were in a coaching session, my suggestion would be that it's nothing to do with the guy. he's reflecting back to you a belief about yourself, a belief that you have about life. He's a gift in a way, because he's bringing to the surface this self-hatred, the self-loathing, the shame that is unresolved in you. So it's an opportunity for you to dive into that and maybe even do some journaling exactly about how you felt, the feelings that came up, what came up afterwards, because none of this is new. Like, so this feeling of shame and self-loathing, I'm sure, is a familiar one for you. It's not something that was created by this situation. The situation brought it to the surface. Does that resonate with you?
To be honest, I've not felt this in a long, long time.
Have you felt it before?
I may have felt it before. What I did feel before was, I should have spoken up.
Okay.
I,
Yeah.
I should have had a red line and I should have said no.
What does it mean about you that you didn't speak up? Say it
Well,
to you.
it means that, I mean, he was, he was really, really forceful, and the only way I could have stopped him was physically holding his hand and say no.
Yeah,
But, that is also, it's inappropriate in modern society.
sure.
To stop someone by force, or the other thing was, I'm sitting in this chair, and he has a he, and he has a he has a razor in his hand, and my
Could be a weapon. Yeah.
and my throat is exposed. I don't know what I felt, but no, I have, I don't have any self-loathing, self-hatred, generally, but I felt weak yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
Um,
under yeah.
I don't normally feel weak. Maybe I did when I was a child. I felt that I was treated as a child with no autonomy, and so that's what happened. Um,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, yeah, that was it. Mm.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, and I can really relate to this, as I said, as somebody who is like a recovering people pleaser and, has historically had trouble speaking up for myself, and then feeling it does feel like an assault, because I think I have tended to attract people into my life who are overbearing, because of my nature. So somebody who's overbearing is going to be naturally drawn to somebody who is like maybe more timid, or who is more obliging and more pleasing, because that's the dynamic that those people are looking for. And that's why I say it's less about them and more about me. And what I have found, as the more I've done the work on myself, to start speaking up for myself, to start feeling comfortable, or even if I don't feel comfortable, to say the thing I need to say, even though my brain's like saying, like danger, danger. If little by little I've been speaking up for myself, then it eventually feels less dangerous, and your brain starts to get the picture like, okay, I'm not going to die if I speak up for myself. So I think in the moment, and again, taking baby steps, if we can override that sense of fear and do the thing that we know we need to do anyways, then eventually you're going to have a new comfort zone. Your comfort zone is going to edge towards feeling more comfortable speaking up for yourself. And a great way to do that is in situations that aren't so threatening. So for example, I don't know, like if your spouse says like that they want to go to this kind of restaurant, and maybe I would normally say like, yeah, that's fine, but really I want to do something else. It's like practicing saying what you want, practicing also respecting what you want and your own desires and your own preferences. This is a great way to start speaking up for yourself and sort of building that vocal muscle that, for some of us is more difficult.
I just want to get your view on this on this manifestation of stammering, and they say people stammer differently, and there's different styles. As a person with a stutter myself, I've exhibited every kind of stammering that you can think of. There's word repetitions, there's speech blocks, and there's forcing to get the word out, and there's also everything like there's you know visibly showing the effort in the face and the hands to get the word out. Now, there is a hypothesis that um that when some people stutter in situations, also in myself, say they're trying to say a word, and um, so I don't know if you've seen this in real life or not, but say for example, if you have a word, the word force, okay, and they want to say this word force, and the word isn't coming out, or the sound isn't coming out. So what a natural inclination is to really show the other person how hard they're trying to get it out. No, kind of no, and then there's lip sounds and and extreme situations. There's the the um the the saliva starts to come out um come out of the mouth and the chin, and really hard. Now the theory that the explanation of this is this, because when you talk, there's only one way to talk, isn't it? I mean, it's universal. I mean, the larynx has to buzz, and then you form the words with your mouth. That's the only way to talk. No, that's not really. It's actually not physiologically possible to talk that way. So the question is, why do people with stutters do this? This is why do they push? Basically, why do they force? Now, there's various hypotheses, and I think all of them are true to a certain degree. There's one hypothesis is that you know you are uh, uncomfortable uncomfortable with the present moment or what's happening, and you want to escape that moment. So you want to push the word out as soon as possible so that you're out of the moment. Um, um, but of course that's counter counterintuitive, counteractive, because that'll never happen. I mean, eventually, if your body gets tired of pushing, you may go, force. That can happen. And the more relevant thing to what we're discussing just now is the people pleasing aspect of not speaking up for yourself. Um, as a child, when you're speaking to an adult in your life and you can't get the word out, and the adult is kind of waiting, tapping his foot, looking at his watch, kind of thing, hurry up. And the child has to do something. Just because the child cannot talk, so it has to show the adult, look, I am doing something. Um, you know, a child doesn't have our resources. A child can't say to the adult, I can't get any words. I physically can't talk. No, they can't rationalize. The child is confused in her own mind. I can't say anything. So the child has to do something to show the adult that um I'm I'm trying my best to please you. And look how much effort I'm using to please you. So, and then there's another layer which comes on top of that, saying that, look how hard I'm trying, look how much I'm suffering, look how much I'm struggling. Have sympathy on me and don't hurt me. And all these feelings is what I've had. I've shown the adults in my life that I am trying my best to speak, well, to speak, yes, but to please you. And look how much I'm suffering. Have some sympathy on me and don't hurt me. I've had on me. So what I'm so I would like to ask you if this sounds plausible or correct.
Absolutely, it does. And I'm just going to speak about how I can best relate to this, if that's okay with you, because on my own journey of self-discovery and self-inquiry, one thing that I noticed and I really questioned in myself is why do I feel the need, or previously, why do I feel the need to like complain? So for example, um, like you know how you sort of commiserate with people and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm really tired and I have or I've got so much to do. I'm so busy." And I really really wanted to dig into that. And what I realized for me is that it was a way of connecting with people. It was a way of feeling like maybe I'll be taken care of. And if I show people that I'm doing too well, they won't want to help me, they won't want to look after me. And of course, this is all unconscious. It's all an unconscious program. And what I realized is that when I was a child, when if I was ill, then that's when I got the best treatment. That's when I got what I wanted. And we bring these coping mechanisms into adulthood, and it reminds me of what you're reflecting right now. So I think the process of self-inquiry is so important, and when things happen in the moment, to be present with yourself and to ask, like, dig into the behavior, dig into the state, the feeling. And I actually am reading an amazing book right now called Change Your Mind. I don't know if you've heard of RJ Spina. He's an amazing author. And what he suggests doing, which I've just started the process of doing, is before any behavior or when you're experiencing a feeling, writing it down and being like, why am I doing this? Or why am I feeling this way? Why does it matter? And just getting to the root of the reason, the purpose that you're engaging in a behavior or that you're feeling a certain way. And this process of shining the light of awareness onto the drive behind our behaviors and our feelings is so important. And also, you mentioned this idea of not being in the present moment. And I feel like that's why meditation is so important, because we are constantly thinking about the future. In this case, maybe you're thinking of how you sound. I mean, I worry about how I'm going to sound when I'm talking in a group of people, so I can imagine this feeling that you have being amplified. Or we're worrying about the past, like what happened yesterday at the barber. So like we're rarely in the present moment. And I think this is so important to just bring light onto what we're feeling at the moment, the behavior that we're engaging in, the state that we're feeling. And I wonder if this could be something that could be useful in this case, like what's coming up for you in the moment when you're, feeling like it's difficult to speak.
I'm assuming that was a question to me about what I'm feeling. And yeah, when it's difficult to speak, well, not so much for me now, uh, because of my research, etc. But from speaking to fellow people who stutter, they want to escape from that moment. They do not want the stutter because they've been told their whole lives that stuttering is bad
Mm,
by therapists. There's a duality of good and bad. So when I can still be in intense blocking situations. You want to leave that moment. You want to say that word, get it out quickly so you can stop this feeling of shame, and so I can understand why meditation and acceptance of whatever it is, that's what it is. Which will then, which could then enable you to actually say the word in the way you want it without, without feeling that you're taking up too much of your listeners' time. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Uh,
Yeah.
And I think that what you just said there is really interesting. Worry about taking up too much of your listeners' time. And I wonder if there's something there about feeling worthy of everybody's time. And again, it goes back to that people pleasing and that fawn response, like wanting to make sure, you're not inconveniencing everyone, or you're not yeah, like you're not receiving disapproval or judgment from everybody. And I think those feelings, and sort of going back to the beginning where you're talking about, the importance of just looking at the psychological aspect, it would be so rich to go into those feelings and find out exactly where they come from.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and and at the end of the day, you may or may not agree. Stuttering is actually a manifestation of what's happening inside, and focusing on focusing on just speech without going into the, the energetic, aspects of and psychological aspects. Um, that's just looking at things on a very surface level. And so it is important to look at things somatically and chakras, ECT, and the work which you do. Something interesting that you'd said at the start, which I, which I was making notes of what you were saying at the start, just so I can go back to it. When you do your ECT, you mentioned going into a relaxed state first. Um, is that like going into a slower level of brainwaves, like into the theta, delta state, etc.
Yes, sometimes I use some hypnotic scripting before starting ECT. It depends on the person and the level of relaxation that they're at during the session. So sometimes people can be nervous about it, overthinking, worrying about what's going to come up. Like, am I going to experience like some scary things that I don't consciously remember? And in those cases, it's useful for me to bring them into a guided meditation and using some hypnosis as well. And ideally, yeah, being in like a theta state is the best way possible for them to be conscious but still relaxed enough to let their unconscious mind do the talking.
And understand that the relaxed states are better for retraining your mind and reprogramming
Absolutely.
the mind. Um, uh, do you have a recommended daily routine to stay relaxed, or or things we should do and things we should not do to give ourselves the best chance not to not to go into this stress response as a default.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many different tools. I think one that is overlooked a lot and that is extremely powerful is ensuring that the first light that your eyes see in the morning is the natural light, not from behind a window. So instead of picking up your phone and checking messages, which most of us are guilty of doing, getting outside and receiving the morning light in your eyes is an amazing way to start the day. And what it does is it almost sets, not almost, it does set a timer in your body. So your body receives the light codes from the morning light. And then basically 12 hours from then, it will start producing melatonin because it understands the rhythm of the day. So getting natural sunlight is one of the best ways to start the day. And it doesn't matter if it's cloudy because you're still receiving all of the light codes from the sun. So I would suggest starting the day like that. Journaling is an amazing tool, which I think can seem tedious, but it's so important. So to wake up, start your day with gratitude, start your day with like perhaps writing down 3 things that you're grateful for, and then intentions for the day, whatever they may be, whether it's to be more relaxed, more at peace. And meditation is so powerful. And starting with even 5 minutes of meditation, just sitting in silence and just continuing to return to the present moment is a great way to do that. I know a lot of people enjoy guided meditations and things like that. However, the most powerful thing is just silence and being comfortable in your body in complete silence. And then that can become moving meditation. And that means just being completely engrossed and engaged in whatever task you're doing. So if you're washing the dishes, being completely present without thought. And yeah, to me, I've been meditating for many, many years. And I've only just really started grasping what true meditation is, and that's presence without thinking. Um, so those are some of the tools that I use. And I think when we're talking about retraining the brain and we're talking about changing beliefs, it's great to do like hypnosis and to do ECT, but it's what really extends that and what really changes the wiring of your brain is the actions that you take. So one fun thing that my teacher and mentor, Elizabeth Ann Walker, who also developed this ECT technique, is she says, start brushing your teeth with your left hand or the opposite hand that you normally use as a way to train your brain to behave in a different way. And so it's taking those micro steps as we were talking about when we were talking about the people pleasing, like taking those small steps of doing something different. That 2% change every day in your action can make all of the difference over time. So instead of doing something extreme once and then going into that fawn response or flight or fight, taking those small steps outside of your comfort zone every day in whatever area challenges you is an amazing way to start making changes to your belief system.
I think that's excellent advice, and phones, etc. And looking at the phone the first thing in the morning when you're in a delta theta state is dangerous because whatever you see on the screen, that's being programmed into your mind. There's no you know there's no filter actually. So you can if you go outside, then rather than receiving electronic information, you can get information from nature itself. You can see the vastness of the sky, etc. And the way I see this tying into stuttering, if you're in a situation and you're feeling a block, rather than finding ways to escape, to distract yourself, just looking for ways, I need to scroll something or I need to do this. You can be totally present and understand that there's no need to please this person. So there's no need to, if even if the word isn't coming out, pushing is not going to solve it. And and then just even letting your natural physiology take its course. And coming back to my own situation yesterday at the barber, if I had followed your routine for the last couple of months, for example, and did my meditation, not looked at my phone, went outside, I would have been sitting on the chair, and as soon as he crossed my my boundaries, I could have said, "Stop," and then he would have felt it. He would have known. He would have said, "Stop." Um, I know it's easier said than done, but in hindsight, listening to your advice, um, you know, I think that I've learned something from what you said, and went through an ECT process in my head, went back, visualized myself saying stop, and I feel stronger now. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a couple of minutes left. This has gone so fast. There's so much I wanted to ask you, so much left to cover. We've only not even scratched the surface of this whole topic. Um, you know, what I've liked about our chat is that we we focused on long-term changes, and it's not like when someone you get a message from, if you receive an email from one of your clients, not necessarily someone who stutters, but say someone who stutters, they email you saying, I have a I have a I have a I have a job interview in an hour. Do you have anything that I can do? It doesn't really it doesn't really work that way. Um, but if they've been following your steps, or following a different routine for months, then then if they have a presentation, or they have a job interview, or something important, they will be ready for that at that time, rather
Yeah,
than looking for short-term quick fixes. Didn't
so
that
true.
like it?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think many of us just want a quick fix to our behaviors and our problems, but it really takes that effort and awareness, and that small change over time. But if you just keep going with those small changes every day, they'll compound, and you'll arrive 6 months from now in a completely different place. So it's about committing to yourself and sticking to those small changes.
Um, and finally, how can people contact you?
People can contact me on Instagram. I'm quite active there, and my handle is Joanna underscore rarefied. And I also have a website, which is joannapolillo.com.
Okay, that's very useful, and I certainly got a lot out of this, and I'm certain others will too. And I thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All the best.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. I've learned a lot too. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.